All right. Yeah, my introduction, I tend to do these introductions. Sometimes I've done them lately with the person already here, but I'll just do one. I'll cut it into a final cut afterwards. So I'll take the time after our interview, and it feels like after the interview, I have more of a feeling for you. And so then it comes more from the heart instead of me. I can look at your profile, and I've been doing that, and I've just been like reading straight from their profile, but I feel like I'm plagiarizing your own words and taking them. It's like, because people do, you have to write about yourself, you introduce yourself, Dr. Kristen Heim, and you even said it in German today, so Christian Heim, so you have a little bit of German. That's interesting. So
I do. Yeah, well, you can get to that story if you want. It's
yeah.
It's your show, and I like the feel of your show. So
that's cool. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time for us today. And for people just tuning in right now, we're talking about love, but we want to take it, and not just, like I said before we got online. I think everyone has, when you say the word love, everyone's like, well, I'm a professional, I know what I'm talking about. When it comes to love, everyone feels, including myself, I feel like I got it figured out. So ask me anything you want about it, and I'm good to go. And then now I have a psychiatrist sitting across from me, and he's going to be like, well, let's talk about this, maybe in this preventative mental health. Let's talk about love in this world, and how it these days, especially since the pandemic has hit, there's just a lot to talk about here. So
there's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah. So that's it. I just say, well, I was a child, I was an adolescent, I was a young adult, I was an adult, I was an older adult, and in all of these phases, I have this certain relationship with love when I think about it, to my, about my own personal experience, and then I have children and how I love my children, and I guess, where do you start? Where do you like to start when you're talking about love?
About love. Okay, so first of all. As you just described, love is a human experience. It's an experience for all of us. It's something that we all experience. It's all that we all enjoy. It can get frustrating for all of us. We all kind of want to work it out. And we think that we've got this idea that we know what love is. But hey, what I found out is that as soon as you use the word love, we all go gaga. It's as though we stop thinking because, love, I know what love is because it feels so good. But when we think about it, why does it go wrong so much? And why is one of the most beautiful experiences that we have not being able to be fostered? It seems to be that we lack love in our society. And because I speak with so many people, Remington, that have not enough love in their life, I thought, okay, well, what is it that they actually don't have enough of? What is it that they need? What can I do as a psychiatrist, clinically, right here in my office, talk about to help this person make sure that they don't end up in depression, or they don't end up in anxiety, or they feel better enough in this world, so they want to hang around a bit longer, okay?
Yeah. So you do meet a lot. I mean, you see it every day. I guess if everything's working out for you, like if I'm in this good, happy, lovey place, then I just like, I'm good, But in your profession, you're coming across basically the opposite, right? You're coming everybody that comes across your table is already there because they're hurting in some way.
They're hurting a lot, Remington. By the time somebody gets to see a consultant psychiatrist, let's say for depression, they've already trialed 2 antidepressants. They've seen 1 or 2 doctors in the community. They may have seen a psychologist already, all right? So this is kind of a person that needs some answers quickly. And if I can go to some of the evidence sort of straight away, sure. There was a beautiful book written by a child psychiatrist by the name of Bruce Perry. And what he found was that his work with children that had suffered trauma, one of the things that protected them from the effects of that trauma in their life was love. And you go, okay, what does that mean? That means that they had people around them that shared love with them. And Remington, I've had personal friends who have gone through some of the most horrendous traumas because of dictatorial regimes in South America, and they have never needed to see a psychiatrist because they've been surrounded in a large family. They found a love partner that was able to share love with them. And as this person says to me, my family's love is like a big, beautiful bath that I can take every day. So I thought, from a scientific point of view, if I can get more people into this bath of love, rather than the loneliness, the isolation, the fragmentation, and the alienation that we see in today's world, then perhaps we'd be able to do some more for their mental illness to help them recover. So this was a big discovery for me, that love itself can actually protect people from the effects of trauma. Now that's where trauma has actually happened. And because my area was trauma, personal trauma, I wanted to look specifically at how we could use that to help people heal and recover. You have to stop me sometimes, Remington.
No, actually, I really want to. I feel like that's actually a sickness that I have, as I interrupt people. So I'm working extra hard today to just let you think through it. And I'm trying to, I follow that completely. Again, as you're talking, I just have millions of little stories I want to tell about my own life, and it's like, well, why? But love is it's so, gosh, I don't know how it seems like so big and so easy at the same time, but at the same time, I think I can imagine if you've had this life without love, to open yourself back up to it, to get to that point where you're ready to allow this love to heal you, seems like not even possible, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And our conceptions of love has almost become a cliche word in society, okay?
Sure.
Because people have been hurt in love, okay? And people have been duped. So there's this idea that, real love doesn't exist. So I thought, all right, so let's take a scientific approach. What does it look like to take a scientific approach in love? And so one of the first things we look at is what happens in the brain when somebody is in love. And we find that in the last 20 years, science has made a lot of progress in working this out. In fact, it's through the work of Helen Fisher that we now look at love in 3 stages.
Okay.
We look at lust, we look at attraction, and we look at what we call attachment. When you end up in a long-term relationship and sort of say, you know what, we kind of belong together now. So those 3 stages are very different in the brain. And then I thought, okay, but here we're just talking about romantic love, aren't we? There must be lots of different types of love. And for science, the bottom line for everything is survival. And we know that couples are good for survival because nature gets a chance to have children. But let's say the love that a parent has for a child, that's really good for survival, because an infant by itself couldn't even exist. It needs a mother or a mother figure just to be fed, just to have its daily needs met. And then we go further from that and we go, all right, we're only going to survive if we kind of get along in society. Well, what kind of love is that? That means that we've kind of got to get on with our fellow human being. We've got to be compassionate. We've got to show some kindness, or else we may end up tearing each other apart. So even from a scientific point of view, I've articulated 3 different types of love there.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, so the book that I ended up writing is called The 7 Lovetypes. So I ended up fleshing it out to talk about 7 different types of love that we all come across in our life, to give us a framework of thinking of this wonderful thing called love.
Okay. Yeah. So I wrote those down. I got on your email list, and that's a cool thing. So you can get the first chapter sent to you with an email.
Yeah.
And that's nice to kind of get an idea of what's in the book, and I have them here, so it's fun to try and pronounce them, because but in the parentheses you put like the English word for it, because these words, they seem Greek or something.
Yes, they are. They're all from ancient Greece. Yes.
Okay. Okay. That's like Philia, Eros, they sound all like some type of god or something, but
That's all Eros was. That's right.
Eros was, right? I don't. It's probably just because I watched something with my son. I'm terrible when it comes to that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And you've kind of hit the nail on the head, because the problem that we have, particularly in the English language, is we have this one word, love.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas in the ancient Greek, they had lots of words. Okay. And we don't have a consensus as to how many words there are. And it kind of goes outside of our definition of love. But I've chosen 7 of these words that, from my point of view, robustly reflects the kind of love that we all journey through in our life. And so these 7 types of love, so you talked about philia.
Yeah.
So that's friendship. Okay. So Philadelphia being the city of brotherly, sisterly affection. If you're a Francophile, you like all things French. If you're hydrophilic, that means that you like water. That philia means affection.
Philia. Oh, yeah, yeah. And then when that's
Yeah.
okay. No, that's built into language like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. So there was that, and what we generally associate with love is this term eros, from which we get our word erotic.
Yeah.
So it's the sexual love of a love partnership, 2 people wanting to be together and possibly becoming a framework for children. But what happens when you have children? Okay, well, that's a non-sexual love that you have for children.
Yeah.
In fact, we tend to glorify that type of love as a kind of a pure love. And so the Greek word for this belonging love, when you belong as part of a family, or you've had a child and you feel that child belongs to me, in the Greek is known as storge. And storge is probably one of the strongest, if not the most strongest type of love that we have. Okay.
Yeah.
So Remington, rather than go through a list of all 7, because
Sure.
we will get to all 7.
Yeah.
I'll just sort of say how this plays out in relationships, because I do a lot of relationship therapy for couples where mental illness is part of the mix. Okay. So that can make a relationship really, really difficult.
Sure.
And so a lot of people who are on the brink of breaking up will go, oh, you know what? We need more romance. We need more sex. We need to become more romantically involved with each other. And sometimes they really need to work on their friendship or their sense of belonging, because when you've been with somebody, let's say 14 years, this idea that, you know what, maybe you and I belong together, that we've built up something more than the romance that we started with, becomes really important.
And people tend to forget that. They think that the solution is just to do something sexually different, like we need to bring a third person into the mix or something weird, where you're like, that's the exact opposite of what you need to do right now.
Well, that's right. And you see, this is where science helps us as well, because the pattern is that in the first couple of years of a relationship, all right, you kind of feel those hormones buzzing and you sort of go, this is fantastic. But when you're committed to somebody and you live in a long-term relationship, all of a sudden financial problems become huge. Okay, children are more important than dates out, all right? And trying to get on with somebody else's personality, becomes more of a focus rather than the dress that somebody happens to be wearing, or the lovely words that somebody says. And so a lot of people will think, oh, the romance dies. Well, that's only half the story, because number one, the romance doesn't die. But number two, what's growing is storge love, this sense of belonging. Or what could be growing is philia love, the sense that we're actually best friends. I mean, it's amazing when somebody can say that their love partner is their best friend as well. That's a great feeling.
And Franzi, my wife is works in we have a pharmacy here in the same building where we're at here, and she has sometimes these older couples come in, and she'll come home and she'll just be like, she'll have this look in her eye. She's like, I love you. And I'm like, well, what are you what's going on? What, she's like, oh, I saw this couple today and they're both over 90. And they're both they're basically, I think they're living on love at that point. Yeah. Like there's nothing else really pushing you anymore. They're hanging in for each other. And then, I don't know, she's like, just the way that he still opened the door for her, and he still, kind of just did all these small kindnesses that for his wife, and she did that for him, and and when you see that, there's nothing that, I don't know, I guess there's no words that really, you just know that's not romantic love. The romantic love is there, but it's almost like they all feed each other, like the friendship and the belonging. They all kind of balance each other out, or give each other more chances to grow, something like that.
Yeah, they do. And actually, I've got an opportunity to debunk a myth. Okay, there's this idea that the romance dies within 1.5 years or 2 years. But lately they've been doing MRI imaging on people who have been married 40, 50, 60 years, and brains still light up as though they have seen this person for the first time, and they really go, oh my God, that person does something for me. So in a very physical way, right? So, but that doesn't mean it's going to be there for everybody. Okay, so something that's a little bit the opposite of that passionate romantic love is another love type, which in the ancient Greek is xenia.
Okay.
So that's xenia love is hospitality love. It's a love for strangers. And this comes from the idea of the Greek god Zeus being a traveler, and his name was Zeus Xenios, where he would meet strangers and share encounters with them. And so this idea of being hospitable to other people that are strangers to us is xenia love. But you know what? When you're in a love partnership, there is going to be times when your partner becomes a stranger to you, when they react a way that you just haven't expected, or when they tell you about an experience that they have and you go, whoa, I didn't know about that side of you. And in those moments, they become a stranger.
Yeah, I was going to try it.
Yeah. So you may sort of have that feeling if you're ever in an argument with your love partner. Whoa, I thought we were together here, whereas I'm feeling apart from you. And what that does is it leads us to this idea of respect in a relationship, respect for somebody to be somebody else, their own selves, their otherness, so to speak. And with that respect, you then grow to love them as a stranger. And of course, you get to know them, that side of them, so that, again, they become part of you as the person that they belong.
Part of me, I've had those moments, obviously, being in a relationship it's the longest relationship I've ever had for 13, 14 years. For me, it's a long time. Some people will be like, 14 years.
Congratulations, that's good.
Yeah. Before that, it was probably I think we were probably going maximum 12 months, right? So it was like, you go from like 12 months to, 14 years. But
14 years, that's right.
But I've had those moments, and it takes a lot of, it's almost like having to let her go in a way.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of self-confidence, I think, or I guess because you can't let it depend on the other person. You have to really be solid with yourself to allow somebody to go their own path and trust that they'll come back. And if not, then you have to, that's a different thing, but
yeah,
that's tough, because you've had that before, right? You've had a relationship and you let it go maybe, and they didn't come back, and so you have this fear. But it's interesting that you can, out of that, take instead of being afraid of it, take it as more of an opportunity to get to know them in a different way that you didn't know them before. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you just articulated there, that's actually hard to do.
Right. For me,
and a lot of us don't have the skills to know how to do that. All right. Yeah. So that one of the reasons that I articulate this in the book is so that somebody can go, okay, my partner is a stranger to me at the moment. He or she has done something that I just don't understand. All right. This has thrown me. All right. And a lot of people go to, oh, you know what? It's all over.
It's all over,
right?
Sure.
Oh, hold on. Why should it be all over? We've spent 12, 13 years together, okay?
Yeah, you cheated on me. That's
a hard one.
I mean, how I need to be hospitable to you now, right now. That's a really that's a deep one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, that's a very deep one because obviously, if you've been together a long time, if somebody cheats on you, it's not sort of like, oh, what were you? You're trying to tell me this was just a physical thing. What, you forgot about our 14 years? That's a really hard to take. And so what happens is people start looking at their relationship and going, okay, maybe we started growing apart a long time before this happened. All right. You weren't able to tell me that you had a few needs that maybe I wasn't fulfilling. It's obviously different for everybody, but we became strangers. So if we're going to get to know each other and come together again, we need the respect and the hospitality of stranger love, so xenia love, to get to know each other, to respect our otherness, to get back to what we knew, our togetherness.
And as a psychiatrist, you can never say it's all, it's 80% of the, of this and 20%. Most of the people that I see that come into my office that one of the partners has cheated or they both cheated, you can't say that 90% of them have all been growing away from each other for a while, but you would almost see there's always a million reasons for why people do the things they do. But I've watched it in my own life. I've seen other people in my own life, other friends, and you see that they are, in a sense, like the signs are there for an outsider, and that's always the problem. Generally in life, this self reflection and then just your own self reflection as a person, and then the self reflection as a couple. And then we've got this life that we're doing, and now like this last year, the whole thing's just whoop, 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 and I think like there just must be so many relationships right now going through a lot of hard times, especially people that never were together, and then they're forced as a relationship. Now they're like forced to live in this house where they together for a year. Or I mean, there's just a million things happening right now.
There are, and what you're saying is right, and. Okay, so my love partner and I have been brought together on like a 24/7 basis. Okay.
Yeah.
And Remington, I got to tell you, that's put some pressures on. Okay. We've gotten to know more of each other in depth, but it means that we've had to go into a situation that we weren't in before and negotiate that. And when I work with couples in my office, Remington, there are 8 billion people on this earth and we're all unique. Okay. So if you get two unique people together, that's going to create an even more unique relationship. So the first thing I need to do is to find out, how does this relationship work? Because my experience tells me that it's actually different for different relationships. And while there are some rules as to what will make a relationship work or not, it's all very unique, and you end up in this world where that if this couple had been together for 12 years, there's a lot they're doing right. Okay, so you got to find that out, and you got to find out certain things about the energies, and so there's a lot of getting to know people before getting to the reason why something was going wrong, or why somebody's needs are not being fulfilled, or what's happening in the balance between the two people. So in that, we're always working with this idea that there are two separate people. So they're strangers in a sense, but they're also together, and they belong together, and they have built up something together.
Yeah, that's interesting. It must be, I don't know, like I've never been to a therapist. I've never, I've had my own issues. Everyone does, right? And I've somehow, I got lucky with my wife, actually, because she's somebody that she doesn't like overanalyze things, and it turned out that she's just kind of like, I remember when I first that was a real big test when I got to Germany, because I was just thrown in this cold water. And so all these things that maybe weren't perfectly solid and weren't really set up how they should be, they instantly got exposed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thank
Yeah.
God that she stuck around through that, because there was a good year and a half there where she probably was just thinking like, who did I get in relationship with, because this
Yeah. Yeah.
think
And
go ahead. Yeah, I think
I'm sorry.
things like jealousy, things like because I didn't speak the language, and I never considered myself a jealous person whatsoever. And then
Yeah.
I'm here in this very other world, and I'm like, don't have any. And I remember just seeing her talking to other guys, friends of hers, like lifetime friends, like nothing romantic,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but I just judged it like they're just talking about me and they're laughing about me, like totally way
Yeah. Yeah.
out there.
No, no, but I understand that, and that in a way is the stranger experience. You were, when you first moved to Germany, a stranger, okay, and it is really strange hearing people talk around you and you don't understand what they're saying, okay, because that thing that brings us together, language as people, is momentarily taken away, and then you're going, what? I'm not part of it. I want to be part of this conversation. What are you saying to her? I want to understand. I've got to be part of it too.
Yeah.
And because I speak German and I have spent a lot of time in Germany, I understand that my love partner feels that way whenever we're in Germany. Right?
Yeah.
And at that time, not only are you a stranger, but, and I'm going to go to another love type with this, okay?
Perfect.
For that time, your partner will become a mentor to you, all right? So I would imagine that you've had experiences with your love partner that go something like, well, in Germany, when they say this, they really mean this. And in polite conversation, you'll say this, but when you're more familiar with people, you'll do that. And you'll go, oh, yeah, but in California, we used to do this. Well, that doesn't quite work here.
Yeah.
And so she, being more expert in being German than you are, will lovingly guide you so that you can do life better in Germany.
Yeah, in a good situation. Yeah, like the best case. Like I think my expectation for that mentorship was really high though. Like, like
Yeah.
I know that I remember just saying like, come on, you're supposed to tell me that. She's like, okay, but like out of the 30 things I told you today, now you're getting mad about the one that I didn't tell you. It was just God. I think though that really strengthened our relationship, right? This whole the fact that we made it through that hard time, and this woman is just in that sense, it was almost like she was my therapist in a sense. She basically just told me to, like, every time I would go, my brain would just have too much. She'd just be like, go take a nap, and I'm like, I don't need to take a nap, but it worked. I would go take a nap and I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh wow, I guess my brain was just over the top. And you just
so she tells you to take a nap.
That was a good advice,
because she loves you, right?
Thank God.
That's not very romantic of her to say go and take a nap, because in that moment she's working like your mentor in guiding love, okay? Yeah. And you brought up the idea of therapy, because as a psychotherapist, particularly with people who have experienced severe trauma, what happens when you see somebody week in, week out for years is you become their mentor, okay? You become a bit of a reality check on what people expect out in society, or how to see situations so that your emotions don't blow up. And it really encapsulates the idea of what therapy is. It's actually a mentorship love in a sense of the word. It's a guiding love. It's somebody who has expertise in one area helping somebody else that wants to learn.
That's a nice way. I never thought of it like that. Yeah, that's a
well. Yeah, and that's one thing that I love about therapy, because it's a privilege to be so close in somebody's life, to get to hear what somebody's gone through and what they're thinking and feeling. That's a privilege.
How is that? Because I see that just in the pharmacy with Franzi dealing with people every day, and sick people, obviously, right? Otherwise they wouldn't come into the pharmacy. And that's, you have the normal stuff too. But I see that there's days where it wears on her, and then at the same time, like your wife, she's also. Is she in the same field?
She's a university lecturer in theater. So she was a stage actor, and now she's she's writing books on acting experiences, and we like working together. So a lot of the stuff that we do on our website has to do with presentations that she gives on material that I write.
That's cool. Yeah, I checked out the YouTube a little bit, and you guys are totally cute. And this whole Australian side of you, right? Is she also Australian?
Oh, she's Australian. She has relatives that go back to the First Fleet. Okay.
Right on. Yeah.
Whereas my father was born in southern Germany.
Yeah.
And so our cultures are very different, as in your relationship.
Yeah.
And you know what? That can be a challenge sometimes, but it sure broadens your outlook on life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Where were you in Germany? So that's why that's your roots from Germany. It's because you were born in Germany.
My father was born in Germany. My mother was born in Romania.
Okay.
And their family came out as war refugees. I was born in Australia. But, we were part of a subculture. I have a Catholic background, so we went to a church where Mass was said in German every week.
Oh, interesting.
And I didn't really have an Australian upbringing. I had the upbringing of a subculture in the western suburbs of Sydney.
Interesting.
Which I enjoyed immensely. But it meant that there was a part of me that felt more at home in Europe. So I spent a lot of time living in Vienna and in Paris for a while. And yeah, so there's a part of me that feels at home there rather than Australia. And yet there's a part of me that's very Australian. Put me on a beach and I'm at home.
Yeah. Vienna. Gosh, Vienna is just one of these cities that they have this culture, this, how do you say it? They throw these galas, these big balls, right? Like these.
Yeah.
And there's a whole season to that. I remember being in Austria and this woman.
There's a cafe culture where you just go to a cafe that is decked out different to any other cafe you've been in, and you just talk to people, or the ball period, sort of just after Christmas, going into February and March, and you just go to a different ball every week, and you dance, you get to know people, you get to dress up, and it's part of the culture there. And very enjoyable, I've got to say.
I could imagine. When I was listening to someone, I listened to someone that was living in Vienna, and she's like just talking about this and how, okay, gosh, for them now too in the pandemic. That's all just, it's so important for humans, right? To have this interaction with each other. And I didn't really want to go off that. I kind of wanted to ask you about, about how that is to bring, when you have these sessions with people and you're a mentor, and it takes an amount of emotional energy, right? And then how do you balance that when you come back home and it's like, okay, now are you able to just be like, click, okay, I'm not working anymore, or is there sometimes a process? I can imagine it can be daunting.
Okay, so ideally you're able to switch off when you go home, but I was never really good at that. But there are a few things that really does it for me as far as de-stressing. Number one, of course, is Caroline, my love partner. Okay, because when you have somebody that understands you, right, that just gives you this feeling of familiarity and caring that's just hard to equal anywhere else. And we have 2 children. They're all grown up now, my gosh, but while they were growing up, if it was reading books with them, if it was playing Lego with them, if it was rough and tumbling around the house or going on a bushwalk with them, that feeling of belonging and togetherness is really good. And the other thing is I play the piano every day, and I try to get out in nature every day. And obviously, after a long day's work, I may not have time for either of those, but they're the kind of things that keep my mind really refreshed.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I saw that. Piano is one of your, in German you say Leidenschaft, right? It's something that you love to do.
My passion, yes.
Passion. You've been doing that for a long time. Yeah, right? I mean, it's not something you picked up as like a child. Or...
Music is something that I had before I became a doctor.
Yeah.
But Remington, if you mind me asking, what's your Leidenschaft? What do you do to de-stress?
Jiu-jitsu. But that's
Oh,
something I found that relatively late in life, though. Before I had that, I it was definitely once I became a father. That was, like you said, having that. I've always somehow wanted to be a father. I don't know what that is about me. I always wanted to have a family.
yeah.
And so that was something. And having Franzi, like, that was all just a thing. I have to say, like, jiu-jitsu, I wish I would have found it sooner, because it's one of these things that teaches me humility every time, because you're basically getting choked by other people. but it's kind of like, okay, that you just have like it's good for the brain to shut it off, and then you have to be focused. You're in this moment, and then this artistic side of it is just something that I'm so interested in. This whole the depth at which you can go into this sport. It's not just a sport anymore. It's a way of life, and you can. I have to be careful with it, actually, because I can't prioritize it too high, because we do have 3 children and they're young, and I really want to. It's my identity to be a father to these children and be a good husband, and so. But you can see how I could easily do jiu-jitsu 5 or 6 times a week, or 12 or 2 times a day, 5 days a week. I could easily go there. So and then if one of your children grows to have a passion for jiu-jitsu, then all of a sudden you have a point of connection with somebody who's really close to you, and it brings that connection even closer. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I honestly, I have a thing there with like, I've done that with snowboarding with my son, and I've seen how that works. And we go out, we'll do like the winter vacation, and we'll go, and it was pretty. We had one of those moments. It's pretty awesome when you do, when he's enjoying himself and he's not just doing it for me, and it's like his thing, but then he looks at you like, this is cool. That's great. How old are your children?
I can't call them children anymore. They're 26 and 27. Okay,
yeah,
so
cool.
25 and 26.
Pretty close to each other too, right? Yeah. Our daughters are like that. They're like right on top of each other.
Your daughters how old?
They're also that age. Like, they're really close to each other. They're just 5 and 3. So it's just, you have like this. Okay. I know what it's like to have 2 kids that are close to each other. There's an interesting dynamic there too, right?
Well, yeah. Because on the one hand, they all belong to the same family, but they've got to become their own person as well. So that's what puts a bit of tension in that sometimes.
Yeah, I just I think that something. It's weird too, because I have this thing. I have conversations with people, and I notice that other people, they haven't had children, and it's like, I think it's so silly that parents think that they did something for the world just because they had children. Like. Like a lot of, like, I had that feeling when we first had our boy, and I was like, God, I'm doing something really good, and it's all this hard work. You have to you want to give yourself some credit, because that first year and a half or 2 years is just like, it's a hard thing. And so you kind of think like, why aren't they having kids? They're just going out and having fun every day, and you just have like this. You want to give yourself some type of booster there. And then because of all the love that you get and all this stuff that you end up getting back when you really go for it, it's unexplainable, right? This belonging love, the guiding love. I would even say the giving, right? How much do you have to give?
Yeah. The giving almost doesn't stop, especially during the first couple of years, because for the first time, you become responsible for somebody else's life entirely. If there are some things that you don't do, the other human being can cease to exist, all right? But if you provide this secure world for them, then they will feel stable to be able to go and explore a world that can become really dangerous, all right? But the fact that they can come back to a secure base will give them stability and resilience that will serve them their whole lives. And we have a whole theory on that. That's attachment theory, which is one of the leading theories on psychiatry and psychological practices. Yeah.
Yeah. So this attachment theory, that this was kind of like at the beginning, you said this in this romantic love area, you have lust, attraction, and then attachment.
Yeah.
And so I have like, with my daughter, I have attachment, and I'm teaching her like if she is heterosexual and she grows up to search for a man as a romantic partner, she's basically going to search for me, right? Like that's my responsibility.
Yeah.
That's so weird to think about that. Like when I'm doing stuff and I'm thinking like, okay, I'm being a bad guy right now. So I'm basically teaching her she's going to love this bad guy, you know? Like if I yell at her and then I apologize to her like every parent does, right? You go off the handle, you lose it. I mean, I'm giving myself a little bit of slack there. And then I'm thinking to myself like, wait a minute, I made her cry. And now I'm apologizing to her, and I'm making her accept my apology basically and say it's all good. I'm like, what kind of asshole am I giving her? Am I training her to fall in love with, you know?
So the broader picture is that you are providing a stable home for her. Okay?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And here's the thing about attachment theory. You don't have to be a great parent. In fact, you don't even have to be a good parent, but you have to be good enough. All right. So in other words, as parents, we're allowed to make mistakes. In fact, it's actually good for us to make mistakes. Just don't make them on purpose. Okay. You make enough anyway. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Because one thing a human brain learns as it's growing up is that this world is not perfect, that there are some things that are going to go wrong, but you've got to find your way to get back to where things are right. And here I want to talk a little bit about the brainwaves of children, okay?
Yeah.
Because before the age of about 11 or 12, children's brains are designed to be in what we call alpha brainwaves predominantly. And what those brainwaves allow them to do is just learn incredibly quickly, learn how to walk, learn how to talk, learn how to ride a bicycle. If they want, they can learn 5 languages and keep them all separate, right? And if you've learned a language like German, Remington, you know, sort of in your teenage years or later, you'll know how difficult that is, okay?
And they just do it.
A child, no worries, okay?
Yeah.
Because when they become 12, they get beta waves. And that's when they start becoming critical. So in other words, all of us adults will sort of think, oh, hold on, this piece of information, I may not actually believe that yet. I may not let it into my brain. We become very critical and judgmental, and we need to be that way. But children aren't. They will accept whatever the home life and the early environment is, okay? Which is why it's very important to keep it loving, secure, and safe the earlier a child is.
It's interesting.
And you're doing that.
Well, but I never knew that these waves. That I knew about these alpha. You have like there's multiple ones, right? That you have theta and beta and delta.
That's right. Yeah.
I just learned. That's so weird. I just was listening to that. I have the Sam Harris app. You're waking up. I think he's fantastic. I don't know. Yeah. I think he's a neurologist, right? I'm not sure.
Sam Harris. I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure of his background.
But it's interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're
well, just that the children are basically until the age of 12. I always tell my wife that they're just. At least until 5 or 6, they're just total egotistical, right? And that's just who they are. It's not like don't take it personal that all they do is think about themselves, right? But kind of sometimes you're just like, just come on a little bit here. And like this morning was a perfect example. I have an appointment 10 o'clock. We had the appointment 10 a.m. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm taking the kids to the kindergarten, and I drive there. It's a good 15-minute drive. It's okay, no big deal. We get there and nobody talked about the fact that the little one needed her bike for the kindergarten because they're going to do a bike tour. And it turned instantly into tears. Like, I'm the worst person. How could you possibly forget that my bike isn't, you know? And I was like, well, Carly, you can also like think about it too. She's like, yeah, I know, I forgot. So turn around, like get my bike or else I'm going to cry. And I'm just like, what do I do there? You know, I could totally just drop her off and talk her into it and make her feel good. I just turned around and went back home. So I was basically driving for like 35 minutes this morning back and forth just for a bike, you know? And my wife would be like, that was a bad decision. I did a bad thing there. I gave in to this princess, you know. She's going to accept that she's going to think for the rest of her life that's what everyone needs to do is just, you know, bend down to her needs, you know.
Well, this is the thing about children, all right? They, for the first 7 or 8 months of their life, so we're talking about young babies, they don't even know that they're a separate person, all right? They
really?
just think that they are a part of mum, and there's this other person, dad, who shows up sometime, you know, and then in the second year of life, they actually cotton onto this idea of, hold on a minute, I'm actually separate, okay?
Oh, really?
And so this is why around 2 years old and 3 years old, they sort of go, no, I can be separate to this person. And they start working in this area of separateness. But underneath, they just assume that you are in charge, that you're going to take care of them, because that's actually what happens.
Right.
So in a way, whatever you decide to do is going to set the tone for who they are. And in this alpha state, children will just learn how you treat them. So you're actually in charge. Okay, if you say that mealtime is at 6 o'clock, well, mealtime's going to be at 6 o'clock, because that's just when we do mealtimes, you know.
Yeah, it's and then that's the thing about being a parent and having all this. And I feel like it's so rich. I could probably talk to you about that for hours, right? This is because it's such a personal thing, and I deal with it every day, and I have so much of my mental capacity is in this area of family, and that's just the phase I'm in. But I also feel like sometimes it hinders me from having conversations with non-parents, and it's like, well, why is that so weird? You know, why do I have to like put it on them? I found myself even in these interviews having an interview with someone that you know was older and hasn't had any kids, and I'm still like assuming that they just have kids. With that, it's almost rude. I almost felt like, well, I can't do that. You know, I can't just assume everyone just has children and then this feedback thing, and almost like I feel bad for them. They're like, but they don't. It's not their.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
what is that? You know, is that, I mean, that's a total normal thing, right? For people to just decide to not have children, or is that something that isn't? As a psychiatrist, how do you see that? Is that something that's a dangerous grounds to go into, or?
I don't know the science on that one, Remington.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because one thing we haven't figured out yet is a part of our brain called the orbitofrontal cortex, which is basically where us, the decision maker, is. Us, the person who's actually driving the car rather than the car itself. Okay. And so what is it that made me decide to play the piano? Or what is it that made you decide to start this podcast series? Or what is it that made you decide to move to Germany? All that you can say is, well, that's what I wanted to do. And so the science behind that, the science behind who says, yeah, I want to have children, and the science behind who says, I don't want to have children.
That's very, very great.
There's a big area that we don't really have there. I mean, there are people, Remington, as you can appreciate, who've had bad childhoods that say, you know what, I just don't want to inflict that on anybody else.
Right.
So I'd rather not go there, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, this frontal cortex idea is tricky, right? I mean, just the fact that you know you're thinking just makes everything really really tricky, slippery slope.
Well, the fact that we know that we're thinking is evidence of consciousness, all right? And I have consciousness, you have consciousness, and we all assume that the people around us have consciousness, but we don't know what consciousness actually is.
Yeah.
All right. So the best definition is it's the stream of thoughts, where each thought is a little piece of water that goes by, and the stream of consciousness is the whole thing. But that's just a metaphor, Remington. What consciousness actually is, and we can measure it in terms of electrical activity in the brain, but how electrical activity becomes the actual experience of having thoughts and being alive, we don't understand that yet. We've got a long way to go.
I agree. I think we do. Every time I go into some type of meditation or something like that, and the main types of meditation I'm doing, I did one for our conversation today about it's metta meditation. So
Metta
it's
meditation.
yeah. So I think it's just based on love, right? Because that was the topic, and I was like, well, I'm gonna see if I can bring something to the table there, and it's like you pick someone that you're not in a romantic relationship with,
Yeah.
someone that you maybe admire, and it has to be like an uncomplicated relationship. Probably because it was the first session, so as you're stepping into this meditation, there was an idea of trying to visualize them and slowly repeat stereotyped phrases like, may you be happy.
Yeah.
May you be free from suffering. And may your hopes for this life be realized. And it seems kind of stereotyped, right? But it seems kind of like you're forcing it. But I think if you really do say that and think that about somebody, it's an interesting feeling that comes back somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, so that sounds to me like a compassion meditation, okay?
Yeah.
Where you're using your brainwaves to focus on somebody else and basically wish them well. And compassion is very interesting because it happens in the limbic system where our feelings are basically generated, as well as in the frontal lobe where we make decisions, okay? So the decision to be helpful for somebody else is a hallmark of compassion. And that, of course, is part of agape, which is giving love, deciding to do something simply for somebody else, altruistically.
Yeah, and there's always this thing about this altruistic thing where, you know, do you do it? What's truly altruistic, and what are you doing to make yourself feel better or something? You know, how much of it is truly altruistic, or how much of it is just? You almost feel like it's so weird because during the meditation, I was like thinking about it, and I'm thinking to myself like, well, isn't that so? Like I'm there's some part of it, I have to be honest, there's some part of like, man, I'm really a nice guy for thinking that. That's,
I know that makes you feel good,
but it's like,
maybe I'm a nice guy.
Yeah, like I'll just, so I was like, well, that's not really what I wanted. I really want, like, if you really do it, if you really mean it, then that thought shouldn't cross your mind, right? Because if you're really focusing on this person's well-being, then you're maybe visualizing them in this happy life that they're living. And it takes so much consciousness in that moment that I can't possibly think of anything else. If I'm really doing it right, then I should be really thinking for this help, this person, and not that they need it or anything, but just that. And these alpha waves and these brain waves, I have a feeling that somewhere it gets received somehow. I just have to say it. Yeah.
Now, altruism is a very interesting area because, if we went with, let's say, the evolutionary biologists like Richard Dawkins, we're talking about the selfish gene theory that he published in 1976. Well, he'd basically say is, look, it comes down to our own survival somehow, and we will help somebody else because we know that it helps us all to survive. But in the 40 years since he wrote that book, we've had a lot of studies, and we still do not understand altruism. So there was one study that basically saw that we can basically, as human beings, have the potential to be psychopaths or to be totally altruistic. So we're born, so it's not in our genes, we are born with this potential to be anywhere on that spectrum. And then it's our early childhood environment, it's our whole culture, it's our parents and our experiences and how we decide to react to our experiences that start to generate a pattern that moves us either towards genuine altruism or towards excessive selfishness, or somewhere in between, which is what I'd argue that most of us are on, okay? Somewhere in between that, we have the capacity still to be altruistic, and we have the capacity to be selfish. And here's the interesting thing. It's the decisions that we make that can make the difference.
And you
decided to meditate. You decided that you were going to do this.
Right.
And the question, Remington, is why? Why did you decide to do that?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think that's the funny thing about decisions, right? Because on the outside, it brings me back to moving to Germany. Like on the outside, the decision was like, I'm in love with this girl. I'm just coming out here. I'm moving to Germany. But I realized that the decision, I hadn't made the decision yet. I just was doing something that I was in love and I was following my heart, and you can blame it on all these irrational things. But like, I think the decision was actually 18 months later when I decided not to go back home, because I was like, because everything. So yeah, decisions are tricky. I think, why do you make a podcast? Things like that. Why you were saying that all these things that happen in the frontal cortex, like to be able to, without, I guess, to analyze that decision-making process without any bias is impossible, but with, like, just say with as little as bias as possible, right? So you have maybe that's what a good mentor is there for, to say, well, maybe you're kind of going this way. You're saying you want to do this, but you're doing this. So there's, but meditating definitely helps, and especially where you're saying like this stream of consciousness, these water drops. I feel like that's what meditation tries to bring you to realize that that's what is happening, and to be able to say, I don't have to always be part of that stream. I can kind of maybe take it just even for just a 30-second part of my day, just take a breather from that.
Yeah. In fact, it's interesting because we were talking about brainwaves with children. As adults, we are in beta brainwaves, and they're the critical brainwaves most all of the time. But you see, they're very good for decision making. So when you decide to meditate on somebody else compassionately, that's a decision that you make with your critical brainwaves, the beta brainwaves. But what happens in meditation, as you know, is you quieten down the brain and you slow down the thought processes. You slow down those droplets in your stream, and your brain starts to drop into alpha brainwaves, which is like children's brainwaves, where you're not thinking, you're not being critical, you're just in this state of, it's hard to describe, it's a state of learning but openness to something that is beyond you. And this is what children are all the time. They are always open to what's beyond them, whereas we can shut ourselves off from what's beyond us. But children rely on what's beyond them for their very existence. Even if it's one parent, they will rely on that for their very existence.
That's interesting. I never knew that. And if you think about it, the way that the kids, that's why it's so refreshing when you see kids playing and you see that, God, remember how we used to be? Like they just let it all. It's always letting go. They're just doing it, right? And
that's the alpha waves. Okay.
Yeah.
They will play with each other. Anybody who's able to play, come on in and play.
Yeah.
Try doing this as adults. All right. And why is it so difficult? We seem to need our alcohol. We seem to need our music, and it's all to let go of this critical faculty that we have, because we're all thinking, maybe I don't like that guy, or maybe that person doesn't accept me, or maybe I don't fit in here. So we've got these critical judgments going all the time. Whereas for us to play, we set aside those critical judgments to be in a place of just acceptance of what's going on in the moment, which is why play is so critical for adults, but it's so difficult to do.
Yeah, that's so funny that you say that. The other podcast that we tried to do and then the power went out was with this couple, and that's how she would always. Every time we talked, I just noticed it in her language. She's like, "So yeah, for the next one, I'm looking forward to playing." And she actually used the word play, and I'm like, well, that's a cool way. It's like a playful, like for a conversation. That's a great way, because then if you're playing, then you're open. And you're on this, it's almost like you want to be in this alpha state of mind when you're having an interaction. And it's such an interesting thing. I think just this here, right? Like you're sitting across from me on this big screen TV, and I'm like you do the best with what you can, but I really appreciate your openness. I feel like it's a nice conversation.
Well, yeah, but this is why I like that you have longer podcasts, okay? Because like beforehand we talked about, so how long is this going to be? And what happens is, first up, we're sort of thinking, oh, am I saying the right things? Am I being too didactic? Are we making a connection here?
Yeah.
And now that we've known each other for a whole hour now,
Yeah.
so our brains are actually talking to each other in a more trusting way. So in a sense, we're playing together, all right? We're sort of saying, we'll see where this goes. And that's that spontaneity of play, that let's see what happens, that, oh, that was fun. And it's hard to describe, but it's like our brains are starting to synchronize together and say, okay, yep, I know what you mean here. I know what you mean there. And that's what happens in games.
Yeah, that's why playing board games is so fun, right? You just have like these, yeah. That's one of those things that every time we play a board game in the family, I'm thinking, gosh, it's been a while since we've done that. It's like, why don't we do that more often? You know, because you get that whole, depending on the game. I mean, some of these games are so capitalistic, right? It just like, you know, you're
not talking about Monopoly there, right?
Yeah, you're just taking people's money, and then, you know, I'll loan you that and be just a shark. But to get back to that I guess that's something that I didn't ever really take for an account, that you have like this, maybe there's even a time that you can look on the clock. Like, does it take about an hour? So like the first hour we're on this level, we're getting to know each other. It depends on the openness of the parties, right? But if both are willing, because when I listen to these other long podcasts, that's the magic of the podcast, I almost find.
Yeah.
Because this trust is there, and then the flow of it turns into, you're just you're like a fly on the wall listening to these two brains go at it, right? And explore different ideas in an open format, and it's you learn a lot as a human. I think I learn a lot. I take it in, I consume it, right? But it's really easy to consume that. It seems like your brain kind of follows right into that pattern with it somehow, as a listener.
Yes, and it's like our brains are making connections, all right? So my brain didn't know too much about your brain beforehand, but my brain's made a connection with yours because you're a father, because you married into somebody from a different culture, because you went from an English-speaking country to a German-speaking country. When you heard that I had a German background, your brain goes, oh, another connection there. We both have children, so we make that connection. And so it's like our brains are making these connections, even though we're thousands and thousands of kilometers apart, just like a brain would make connections in itself. Because every time you learn something, your brain actually makes new connections. So an easy example is we've got a left and a right side brain, and there's this huge bundle of nerve fibers that connects both of the brains to make all of these connections. So that, let's say, speech on the left and spatial considerations on the right get together, so that you understand a jiu-jitsu move called this means that, okay?
Yeah.
But in the same way, your brain is now making connections with my brain, sort of saying, oh, I know this guy, okay? There's something that we share in common here, okay? Which means that we're starting to flow together more, right?
Yeah, I just want to keep it going. I want to keep on pulling out everything I can get out of this guy over here. He's got years of knowledge, and you know, having kids that are older is always something. Like when I meet people that have older children, I usually get in this conversation, and they see my kids are like, you know, just spend every waking moment with them. I get that all the time, you know. And you'll notice now, you're smiling more, I'm smiling more, we're both relaxing a bit more, and the only drink that I have in front of me is water, okay? True.
And that's what happens. It takes some initial trust to get into this flow, and this is what naturally happens at parties. You just get to know people, or over board games, you get to know people. You get to think the way that they're thinking, okay? And this is just the natural process of human beings getting to know each other and getting to like each other. And if I dare say it, getting to love each other in very different ways. If that's a friendship, if that's a romantic relationship, is that a bit of mentorship there, or is that just showing each other respect as strangers, right? It all is a different type of love, but it all gets processed in the brain.
I really appreciate that the way that you because you're right. Like even when you're saying that, when you say this word, you're right. It's such a deep. It's not enough. That one word's not enough.
That's right. That's right.
Because like just the uncomfortable feeling of homosexuality comes up when you say I have love between a friend of mine. You know, it's like my buddy and I. We can't say we love each other. You know. Yeah. Oh gosh, that heaven forbid. Right. You know, like.
No, that's right. And and now you're sort of getting at the point of the book, right? By saying the 7 love types, I've now introduced 7 different words for us to use so that we can differentiate between love. Because look, 2 guys get to like each other a lot, and look, there's nothing wrong with it becoming an eros love relationship if that's what they want. Yeah. But there's nothing wrong with it staying a Philia friendship and saying, you know what, this is a friendship that we have here. Or there's nothing wrong with saying, you know, we're actually spending time together because we both like jujitsu, or we both like piano, or we both like watching the Bundesliga or something like that.
Yeah, Bundesliga, exactly.
And that's a different kind of love, all right? That's called epithumia. I'm together with you because we like something that we have in common, right? And your love of jiu-jitsu is epithumia, right? Liking love. My love of the piano is epithumia, all right? Why do I like it? Who cares? I just like it, you know?
Yeah, and it's weird too because the especially in jiu-jitsu, you have this, you have a little bit of that homophobia happening because it's such a contact sport. And a lot of the stuff is very small moves and you're very close. You know, I mean, some of the positions when we start in, like the guy lays on his back and opens up his legs, and you have to go into his guard, and he wraps his legs around you, and then that's how you start. So from like someone as an outsider, they're watching, they're like, you're spending hours doing this? Like you just got this, like, what? Well, okay, then just why don't you guys go straight to the bedroom? And nobody understands that. As an outsider, it's harder to understand. Let's just put it that way.
Well, and this is where language becomes a barrier, because we have this one word, love.
Yeah.
Do you love what you're doing there? Yeah, I love jiu-jitsu. Okay, so why don't you go straight to the bedroom?
Yeah,
okay?
Like, yeah, jiu-jitsu. Yeah, nice try, buddy. You know.
Yeah, because this is epithumia, all right? This is an epithumia love, or the person that I'm spending time with is a friend of mine. That's Philia love.
Yeah.
Whereas I have this one person with whom I am in a romantic relationship. That's eros love, okay? Yeah. Romantic love, okay? And as you know, this gets really complex when it comes to sex, because when somebody says, I like sex with Tom, okay, they could be in it just because they like the sex, not because they even like each other, all right?
Yeah.
So that becomes a different relationship, okay? So you being in a long-term relationship, the physical intimacy tends to have a different meaning, totally, than if it's somebody that it's a casual relationship. In fact, you know, we talked about cheating earlier, where the meaning is just totally different. This is why cheating hurts so much, because it's taking something that is an expression of a romantic love that is there for years and almost equating it with something that happens so quickly and perhaps just chemically or for reasons that is different for everybody.
It's really, I was actually, when I was thinking about having this conversation with you, that was one of the things that I had in my mind. Because before I met Francisca, I never really had this concept of plutonic love, was how she would always say it, which is kind of, I guess, it depends. Plutonic just means it's not romantic, basically. It's just saying it's all the other loves besides the romantic one. It could be.
Yeah.
That you know, you know, and as I came here and I had these feelings of when I didn't speak the language, I saw all of these plutonic loves that she had in her life, and I was jealous of those and stuff, of course. But beyond that, like, it's something that I learned when I came here in general. And it was weird to me because I never really had relationships with women and that weren't at some point romantic. Like I never really had just friendships with women.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had to learn that. But that's
Yeah.
just one of those things, you know. I guess it's just there's a million reasons why or why not. You can analyze that or you can not analyze it, but it's just how it came about for me. And my first exposure to that was eye opening to say, wait a minute, I can even love another woman
Yes.
in a non-romantic way. I mean, you know,
Yes.
there's a woman at jiu-jitsu that I roll with, so that's a type of liking love because
Yes.
we both
Yes.
like this sport. We have this in common. It's a friendship love, and
Yes.
and that's just
Yes.
it's just even saying that feels like, gosh, when my wife watches this, she's gonna be like, I knew it, you know, I knew that. You know what I mean? Like I could feel that, just like, well, be careful what you say here, Remington, because if you go too far, I'll, you know, and say like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Because you were talking about be careful what you say, the idea is to have more words for love so that we don't go, oh, you know, I don't mean this, or oh, I don't mean this. Okay. So to be able to say, well, look, I just have a liking love. This person and I like the same things, or this person and I are actually friends, or this is my romantic partner. They're three very different things. And it's then very clear as to what level of relationship you're operating on with somebody.
yeah.
It also, yeah.
Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was going to say that if you have to have a difficult relationship, like friends often do, is this a friendship or is this something more? So the question is, do we share a friendship love or are we entering into a romantic relationship? And to understand that they are very different love types and fulfill different needs in us.
Yeah, that's interesting too. We were watching a movie last night or the night before with something about monsters or something, and all of the bugs, all the small creatures genetically turned into some huge things, right? And the guy, the I guess you would say the hero of the story is takes a trip through 7 days on the mainland to try and find this girl that he had fallen in love with, and he had thought that it was reciprocated, this romantic love, because they were talking on the radio, and so she probably needed more of a belonging love or some type of love that helped her feel back before it was this bad world that we live in now. When I talk to him, he reminds me of how it was. And for him, it was this romantic love, like I can be the hero and I can save her, and I'm going to, you know. And he gets there, of course, and she kind of says that. She's like, it was like that weird moment, you know, where you have like two different loves mixing up. That's
and that articulates it. And scientifically, the reason why this can become a problem is because a lot of our eros love, our romantic love, at least initially, is based on chemical reactions in the brain. Okay, it's driven by testosterone, it's driven by estrogen, it's driven by pheromones, it's driven by all of these factors. That means that we're not thinking like a friend, we're feeling on a level of passion that we sometimes can't articulate.
Yeah, I mean, I moved to Germany because of that feeling.
Oh,
you know.
So it's powerful. I suppose it's powerful then.
It'll get you going. I mean, it definitely, I sold all my stuff. I went down to nothing. I had to bet 2 bags. And my father-in-law now, felt so bad for me, like, because he heard that I sold my guitar, and he's like a very, he loves to play guitar. So he showed up to the airport with a guitar in his hand. Like, no man should ever sell his guitar, even for love, you know. But yeah,
that's beautiful. That's great.
Yeah, but it's interesting how it could be. Gosh, it's just one of those things, because it can be so powerful if it's used in the right way. And I just love the idea of giving it more depth through these 7 types, so that you have more language, more. You also are able to think of it more fine-grained, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also allows us to articulate the difference between being in a 12 or a 14-year relationship with somebody, or somebody that you've been in relationship with for 6 weeks or 6 days. Okay. Because it's a very different feeling, and it's a very different level of importance in your life. And although they both would have started out with a chemical attraction or being driven by brain chemistry, what has resulted in a relationship let's say that like you're in for 14 years, well, this is not even just a romantic relationship. This person I share friendship love with. This person I share longing with. In fact, we've started a family. With this person I share guiding love, mentorship. With this person, sometimes when she's sick, I've got to be really giving, and that's a giving love. And sometimes I've got to show her respect. And you'll find that the whole gamut of loves are in a complex relationship, like a love partnership.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty opening, mind opening right now for me. I feel like I gotta jump. The thing is, I have to do this with my wife together, because I get the book, but I've done this before where I've dove deep into something like this, or not like this, but it just in some topic, right? And I dive myself deep into it, and then you try and bring it back to the relationship, and they're like, what do you know, like, this seems like something that I should do together with my wife, because then we have a similar definitions now, you know, because I can just, if I just come around the corner and be like, no, it's just epithemia, you know, relax, don't worry. You know, she'll be like, she has to have that definition in her mind too, you know?
Well, that's true, because if you read a book and she doesn't, then in that knowledge area, you become a stranger to her, right? So anybody who's watched a movie alone, you know, what you've got to do is you've got to try to explain what happened in the movie to try to get your partner up to speed with the experience that you have, so that you belong together again. Okay.
Yeah, that happens. That happens probably these days. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that one's a good one.
That's right.
That's a good one. The Netflix, right? So like, that's our way of these days of sharing story time, right? Before it was, I guess, you were around the fire and everyone, you know, you had a storyteller, and now it's like the kids are in bed, so we want to sit down on the couch and watch Netflix, and it turns into this thing like, I don't want to watch what she wants to watch. She doesn't want to watch what I want to watch. So we both watch something we both don't want to watch. I don't know, but you end up getting into these series, these long, the way Netflix is working, right? They have like short series or something like that, and there becomes this whole emotional roller coaster, and there's been moments where we can look back and be like, well, remember when we watched that together, how fun and how enjoyable that was? Because then you have like inside jokes, and there's this whole dialogue about this storyline that you share with your partner, and you know, it's been a while since we've done that, and I think it's mainly, you know, whatever. I appreciate, at the other end of it, I appreciate giving her the space that she needs and letting her go and doing her own shows, right? And not coming around the corner and talking trash about her show and being like, oh, you're watching that again, you know, well then black, you know. Because that's kind of like where we're at now, but I've learned to like just let her go, because that's her time for her, right? So you have to agree to that too. But
and this is balance. This is one of those things that's a balance, because we've actually got scientific study to show that couples these days are having less physical intimacy because they're watching more Netflix, right?
God.
Or they need their alone time. Okay, and we actually do need alone time.
We do, but there's,
it would be nice to sort of go, okay, why don't we watch this series together, all right? Or why don't we watch what you want to watch this week, and then we'll watch what I want to watch next week. But I'll also explain why I like that, all right?
Yeah.
And if you can hit upon something that both of you like, and my partner and I have gone into the 1970s to find something that we both like.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Why
and
not?
we just like that. So that's now our series, you know.
Cool.
And occasionally we'll watch something that she wants to watch more. Sometimes we'll watch things that I want to watch more, but we're spending a time together, and it's all about sharing the journey together.
Well, what is that about Netflix though? I always feel like somehow it's still not the same, like as it used. Like when you're camping and we don't have TV, and we also have great time together. I feel like the time without the TV is always better time. It just is my. Yes. It must be, right?
I'll explain that in terms of brain chemicals, because we are now getting dopamine hits, and dopamine mediates pleasure. If that pleasure comes from food, movies, series, seeing a smile on somebody's face, sunshine, sex, whatever, dopamine is that feeling of pleasure, and watching series on screens gives a lot of pleasure. But you see, when you're around a campfire and it's a little bit cold and you're trying to warm up and you're listening to all these people, there's actually less pleasure, but more what we call oxytocin. And that's a brain chemical that mediates trust, compassion, kindness, and also beta endorphins, which is a brain chemical that mediates that wonderful feeling of just being together with other people. When you share a laugh, when you're crying together, when you're playing a game together, or when you're sitting around a campfire, all the brains get in tune and they feel like they're having a shared experience, because they are.
But you have to have that element of uncomfortability a little bit, right? You have to have a little bit of that. It's got to be a little, like it has to be a little chilly, or
That's right. Yeah.
Somehow I feel like that. There's you might, your first instinct might be like, no, I just want to stay inside. But it's like, if you get out there and you do it, and then it's interesting that you're speaking on this. I wrote that down too, like the serotonin and then dopamine, oxytocin, and these endorphins. Yeah.
Yeah, because the big thing about the campfire is actually the serotonin release, okay? Because what happens is when you're sitting around a campfire with, let's say, 8 or 9 other people your age, and you're getting to know them, you feel like you're a part of the human race. And that comfortable feeling of, oh my gosh, they're accepting me just for who I am, leads to a lot of serotonin release and leads to that feeling of comfort. Whereas when you're watching a Netflix series, you're getting the dopamine, but you're not getting this feeling of being part of the human race. In fact, you're starting to feel alienated. And that's why often we feel bad after watching a lot of screen stuff. And yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, you do, right? I mean, as soon as it's off, it's like, boom, here I am alone again, right? There's this whole it's just, and you want, that's why you don't want to really turn it off. And that's what I see that, and you see that with kids. As an outsider with yourself, it's hard to deal with that moment. You have that moment, and if you're disciplined and you're used to like making these decisions that are uncomfortable for you, then it's just one of those decisions.
Yeah, that's right.
But for a kid, it's like if you go over this 20-minute period, it must be have to do with the brain. Do their brains change? Do they stay alpha when they're watching TV? Or
okay, so basically yes. Okay, although. All right, so we've got a mix of these different brainwaves, and they're just categorizations that we've given them. Okay, so we've categorized brainwaves into basically 4 brainwaves, but brainwaves of different areas have different frequencies.
Okay.
Right, and it's all the whole gamut of brainwave frequencies in between the extremes. So it's only a scientific way of categorizing what's going on, And Remington, I've got to say, all that we know in science, and even all that I'm saying, is a very simplistic representation of what may be going in reality. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So even my statement that all pleasure is dopamine, or all trust is oxytocin, they're huge simplifications of something that is so complex. Because in the brain we might know, I don't know, a few dozens, a few hundreds of brain chemicals, when there may be tens of thousands up there that we just haven't discovered. So we think we know, but we know only such a little bit.
I always appreciate that about scientists and doctors, that like this humility to say that we just know so little. I love that, because that just means that you're on at least you're on the right path, right? Like at least you know what we don't, you know what you know, and you know that it's probably
that's right.
Yeah, something like that, or just that humility to be like, when I say this, and then I group that into this area. But it's true, like after this 20-minute period hits, it becomes extremely more hard for them to come out of this trance that they're in when they're watching TV.
Yeah, I don't know what brainwaves they're in during that trance, but even using the word trance tells me that they've probably gone into a slower brainwave state, but I don't know, okay? But the thing is that we do actually become addicted to the dopamine hits because screens and visual entertainment is just so engaging for the brain, all right? It really is a huge hit for all of us, right? In fact, if you went to the 1930s, people may have watched a movie every month or so. You know, when you got to the 50s or the 60s, they may have watched a movie every couple of weeks or every week. But the amount that we consume visually now is changing our brains, and we don't know to what extent.
There's a lot. That's a lot of stuff there. In this Netflix series I watched too with this Tristan, this guy that used to work for Google. I forget his last name. I just know that he has the same name as my son, but they pronounce it differently. So it was like Tristan something. But he did this whole study and released it on Netflix about this dopamine hit and how the social networks are basically controlling our brains this way, right? Like because of the ad revenues and because it's not a free system, we're the product, right? Because we use our phone and we think, oh, Facebook is free, but what Facebook is doing in the background is just waiting for that right moment to hit me with dopamine so that I can buy something, buy my new Nikes, and they have so much information about me that I'm giving to them in my usage of these, and that's going to be something, you know, maybe you never know. Maybe in 100 years, they're going to look back and be like, gosh, that was really close to maybe we're going down a real bad road right now, you know?
Yeah, unfortunately, scientifically, we know that we are. There's one, this is a study that came out of China. And what they did was they studied the brains of college-age students who use screen technology a lot, like 10 hours a day.
10 hours a day.
And what they found was that the area of the brain that takes care of empathy, so that area of our brain that we all use to gauge social cues, to read what somebody is saying, to be sensitive to somebody's tone of voice, whether they're angry or not, okay? That part of the brain is called the anterior cingulate cortex. And in these people that had very heavy screen use, their anterior cingulate cortex was shrunken. It was smaller,
like literally in size.
Oh, look, and as a psychiatrist, this is a frightening finding, because it means that we are actually devolving all the skills that we developed as social creatures that we are. The brain's saying, you know what, we're not seeing that many people, so we don't need to invest energy in this part of the brain. We'll just let it shrink.
Wow.
Okay. And that to me is frightening, because every hour that you spend on a screen is an hour that you could spend with other people, right? But it takes effort. It takes initial effort with other people.
And the more people that are around you looking like that aren't, I mean, the sun doesn't have to be shining to go outside. I mean, we go outside in our backyard and we're the only people. I feel like sometimes I'm like, look around, like there's nobody outside right now. We're the only people out, but everyone's at home. And everyone's got a day off, and they're all inside, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we just put a jacket on and we go out there, and it's almost like necessary with 3 children. You can't stay inside all day, otherwise you're just gonna murder yourself.
No,
probably.
That's right. That's right. In fact, now you've hit upon what I believe is the most difficult thing about preventative mental health. I can say to you and to your family, play board games together, get outside, enjoy nature. But what we as humans really need is for all of us to be doing that.
All of us, yeah.
Because if you go into a park and you see other families just enjoying the afternoon with their kids, you give them a smile, you just say a few words or whatever, okay? You give them an acknowledgement. And that's what we human beings thrive on, feeling that we are part of the human race, okay? So let's take yesterday, we went for a walk, just a little bushwalk in a small forest, and we came across a waterfall, and the waterfall was beautiful. But what was actually more beautiful was the 200 people that were around there as well, and watching them enjoy themselves. We felt part of something bigger than ourselves. So if everybody stays at home and you're alone with the waterfall, sure, that's good, but it's better to be part of the whole human race enjoying this waterfall. And that's what's hard. We've, in a way, all got to shut down from the internet and go out for walks.
Especially
Say
now.
hi to each other.
That's the message. I think that's a great way to end the show today. Just bringing it on that call to humans to go outside, turn off the devices, and be part of the human race. Start the fire and sit around the fire, even if it seems like it's a little chilly outside. Just bear the first 30 minutes, and then once you're out there,
That's right. And we're going to have to do that in a conscious way, okay? Because 7 Types of Love will allow us to articulate what's going on, but to actually do it, all right, that takes initiative from all of us.
Very well said. Yeah. Goodness. That's some good stuff there, sir. Yeah.
Well, it's been a wonderful conversation, Remington.
Yeah, I really appreciated it. It was nice. It was I feel like that's just such a high point, such a great message to end this on. I probably could keep going, but I feel like that's a good place to start. Maybe we can do this in a second round in like in 3 or 4 months. Or I would like to, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to read the book with my partner and then come back to you.
Yeah.
And
I'd love to. And what you find, my aim in the book also was to explain difficult scientific concepts in a straightforward way, so you can go, I get it. I know what to do with this.
Thank you for that. Yeah, because that's me for sure. Like
It's me too.
Just give me like a nice. In German, you say Deutsch sprechen. Just give it to me in English. Give it to me straight up. I don't, Perfect. Yeah, cool. Hang around after we go offline so that I can say goodbye without the audience, right? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. But Thank you for this opportunity. It's a wonderful podcast series that you're putting on. And these stories are part of being human and keeping us together warm as fellow human beings. Thanks, Remington.
Thank you very much.